So I'm here at the federal courthouse after the Lil Durk hearing, and we just had some very, very interesting information about, possibly the most well-known alleged cooperator in this case, OTF Jam. Now, there was a crazy back and forth where they brought up a bunch of things about Jam. They said that the song Back Again was going to be used. I'm not going to lie, I was happy to hear that because that's like one of my favorite songs. But obviously, in that song, he talks about, Jam got out of that jam, I gave him 50,000, he ain't got to ask again. Well, they're basically saying that Jam is going to testify and cooperate and say that 50,000 that Durk gave him that he rapped about in Back Again, which bear in mind was made before King Von even died, but Jam is going to testify and say that he believes that he was given that money basically as like a, as a show of loyalty to basically kind of get, some kind of like future, as basically not like a prepayment, but basically like on the hopes that in future he might be able to do things for him, he might be able to slide for him. Now what's crazy is that he's allegedly gonna testify that actually when they were filming a music video, at some point, okay, this is absolutely crazy, at some point, all right, Durk and a bunch of the other members apparently confronted Jam in a bathroom. They took him into the bathroom, which is super weird, and they apparently confronted him, and they basically said, you moving too hot, you're gonna get us jammed up, you gotta be more careful about committing murders, and you're gonna get the feds on us. Now apparently that wasn't talking about the Pab murder. Apparently there's other murders, and it sounds like he's actually going to admit to the feds that he was doing all kinds of murders that haven't even been prosecuted by the sounds of it, not even related to this murder, and that he was basically a top hitter in OTF and for the Black Disciples, and that it was really that serious, and Jam was doing all that. So Jam's name came up a couple times. So another area where Jam was brought up, they basically talked about this federal freestyle, and they said that, it's funny because the prosecutors literally said, look, Jam wasn't known as a good rapper. He was known as a hitter, a killer for OTF and for the Black Disciples. He was known as a Black Disciple hitter, and that's why he was put on this federal, ironically named federal freestyle. And that was basically as like, as a favor for Jam. They were saying that was almost like to solidify his place in the ranks of OTF and the dirt that he was going to or had already committed for the crew. And they basically said that apparently Jam is going to testify that he was in the federal freestyle, and that he basically is going to say that, look, he felt like if he didn't do the murder, if he didn't participate in this hit, that he felt like he would be included in these there's all sorts of sirens going on right now, it's crazy. That basically that they feel like Jam said that he didn't feel like he would have been included in all the OTF, things that were going on, these opportunities, if he hadn't participated in that murder. And the last thing I'm going to say is that they said outright that apparently Jam was recruited for the Lil Pab murder by Booney Mo, and they basically said that Booney Mo had said to Jam specifically that Durk, but referring to him as Blood, he wants to fly you out for this murder. And apparently that's all going to be testified to. That's not looking great, to be honest with you guys.
Straight up. Yeah, bro was saying, tell him about how you used to snatch no purses, bro. Like, I ain't want to ask you. Who the fuck, man?
Hey, this message for the OTL Jam. Hey, bro, you gotta have a strong ass stomach to be able to look yourself in the mirror after what you did to your brother. Smirk, aka Lil Durk. Then you jump on Instagram and drop your low, which I think is a fake low. Drop your low and talking tough with your chest out like you done did some commendable shit. You put the in jail. They gave you 50,000 when you got out, helped you get a crib, car, and took care of your people while you was gone. Man, friends like you, man, don't need no enemies, boy. Boy, you a dirty, rotten to the core, motherfucker. Man, y'all need to take that boy immediately.
There's been a lot happening surrounding Lil Durk's federal case, and with the trial approaching, more information from the recent hearing is starting to come to light. One of the biggest developments involves a cooperating witness identified as PW1. While many people online already suspected this person was cooperating with the government, the recent court proceedings appear to have confirmed it. What makes this significant is not simply that PW1 may testify. According to the government's allegations, this witness could provide information about Durk, members of his circle, and events connected to the alleged retaliation surrounding King Von's death. The government reportedly claims PW1 will testify about conversations at a music video shoot where Durk and other individuals allegedly confronted him about his activities. These are serious allegations, and the prosecution would still have to establish their reliability and support them with admissible evidence. That brings up the biggest question. What evidence does the government actually have? Could that be text messages, recordings, phone data, surveillance footage, or other communications? We don't know everything yet, but the hearing suggests prosecutors are attempting to build their case using multiple pieces of evidence, rather than relying on one witness alone. Another major point involves alleged communications concerning Quando Rondo and Lil Tim. Prosecutors reportedly presented messages they say show people connected to Durk looking into Lil Tim's release information and Quando Rondo's appearances. The government's theory appears to be that these actions were connected to retaliation for King Von's death. Prosecutors are trying to establish motive by showing the jury that Durk and others allegedly viewed the situation as unfinished business. They also reportedly brought up the WAC 106.9 podcast. According to the government's theory, the podcast allegedly mocked Durk and encouraged retaliation for King Von. Prosecutors claim Durk saw the content and that it contributed to his motivation. Again, that's the prosecution's theory, not a finding of fact. Another major issue discussed during the hearing was gang evidence. The defense reportedly argued that prosecutors were trying to transform the case from an alleged murder-for-hire case into a gang case. Their argument is essentially that the government wants jurors to associate the defendants with gang activity, so they are more likely to believe the criminal allegations. The prosecution, however, appears to be using alleged gang relationships to explain motive, relationships, and the conduct it says occurred before and after the alleged crime. One piece of evidence reportedly involved a text message in which Durk allegedly referred to being a real gangster and discussed going all out for someone. Prosecutors reportedly connected that message to their theory about loyalty and retaliation. Another message allegedly came weeks after King Von's death. According to the government's presentation, Durk allegedly said he wasn't celebrating New Year's because his friend was gone. The prosecution reportedly focused heavily on another part of that conversation, where the government claims Durk referenced having a location while saying other people weren't doing anything. That could become important if prosecutors are able to connect the conversation to the alleged crime through witness testimony or additional evidence. Money was another issue raised during the hearing. The government reportedly presented photographs involving Durk and another individual with cash. According to prosecutors, PW1 may testify that money shown in those photographs was allegedly divided among people involved in the shooting. If that testimony is presented at trial, the defense will obviously have an opportunity to challenge the witness in question how he knows what the money was for. There was also discussion about an alleged voice memo from 2023. Prosecutors reportedly say the recording involves one person giving instructions to PW1 at Durk's direction. The government apparently wants to use that evidence to support its broader argument that Durk could allegedly communicate instructions through other people, rather than directly handling everything himself. Then there's another text conversation prosecutors reportedly highlighted. According to the government, Durk was allegedly frustrated that certain people were not taking action to retaliate for Von, with one message reportedly suggesting that it was being left up to them. That type of message could become important at trial if prosecutors can establish the context surrounding it. But once again, the meaning of any individual message ultimately depends on the evidence and how both sides present it. There was also an interesting development involving the alleged suspicion that someone in the group was cooperating with investigators. According to the information presented in court, there were reportedly messages discussing whether PW1 was working with federal authorities, prosecutors, and friends to rest in peace. One message reportedly instructed someone to delete a conversation, including information stored in iCloud. But here's where things get complicated. The judge reportedly questioned whether that conversation was actually connected to the alleged murder, or whether it could have involved drugs or another matter. That's an important distinction because prosecutors have to connect the evidence to the charges they're trying to prove. The government also reportedly brought up lyrics from Still Running, arguing that some of the lyrics mirrored statements made publicly by Quando Rondo. The prosecution appears to be using those lyrics as part of a larger narrative about retaliation and intent. The defense, on the other hand, can argue that lyrics are artistic expression and don't necessarily prove that a real-world event occurred. That's likely going to be one of the major battles throughout this case. What do these lyrics, messages, photographs, and conversations actually prove? Finally, there was discussion about something called bifurcated counts. In simple terms, bifurcation means separating certain issues or counts into different phases of a legal proceeding. That doesn't automatically mean there will be an entirely separate trial, so we shouldn't jump to that conclusion without knowing exactly what the judge intends. With the trial approaching, the biggest thing to watch is how the government puts all these individual pieces together. A witness here, a text message there, photos, recordings, phone evidence, lyrics, and alleged communications. The prosecution appears to be building an overall narrative, while the defense will have the opportunity to challenge the witnesses, question the evidence, and argue that individual pieces are being taken out of context. So the real question isn't simply whether the government has a lot of evidence. It's whether that evidence is admissible, credible, connected to the charges, and strong enough to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. We'll have to wait and see what actually comes out once the trial gets underway. Let me know what you think about the latest developments. Do you think the government's evidence is stronger than people expected? Or do you think the defense has legitimate arguments that could create reasonable doubt? Make sure you like the video, leave your thoughts in the comments, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update.